Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Very excited to be joined today by Ryan Crandall, Chief Revenue Officer of MRMD. Very excited to sit down and kind of talk through what is going on in the world of cannabis, as well as get some interesting insight into the company itself and kind of talk through where they're seeing strength as well. So one, good reminder for you out there, thanks for joining, always appreciate it. And two, of course, if you want to connect with an expert like Ryan, I also recommend putting a comment or two in the chat if you have questions. So that is always a resource available to you. All of that said, Ryan, thanks so much for joining. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you for having me today, Mackenzie. Good to see you.
Of course. Great to have you back on. Really appreciate it. I feel like it's, we were talking about earlier kind of in the pre-show, it's funny how fast and slow the world of cannabis moves. So I know from last time we had some great kind of chats, and it'll be interesting to kind of see and check in where we are in 2025. Hey, Stevie, great to see you as well. So maybe a great place to start is kind of with MRMD itself, kind of checking in and getting some insight into how the company itself is performing. I think an interesting place to start would be kind of on the wholesale growth side. I know in your last earnings, there were some strong kind of numbers there. Can you kind of talk us through that a little bit and then kind of talk us through, where that is coming from, the success is kind of coming from?
Happy to, and appreciate the question, Mackenzie. Yeah, our wholesale business is something that we're very proud of, that we focus on, a good amount as a company. I mean, core to our entire existence is brand. It's really all about cannabis brand and having consistent quality products within those brands. So, our wholesale business is rooted in having some high quality, well-known, established brands that consumers can relate to, count on, and really recommend to friends and family. So our wholesale business it continues to expand in every market that we launch, and then continues to grow over time, typically at a faster rate than the market average. So consistent innovation in our products has driven a lot of that within our core brands. So early innovations for us were bedtime beddies. Some of the newer innovation is, pain relief targeted with sleep. So Ache Away PM. We talked the last time a little bit about vibations and having a cannabis drink mix. So really the idea of liquid IV meets cannabis. So the hydrating drink mix being discreet. A lot of seasonal stuff. So a lot of new seasonal lines that keep consumers interested, that really target what our consumers are telling us they want, and rapidly being able to iterate those things, get them out, get feedback, and become more intelligent about our consumers.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think definitely people are looking for different form factors, different kind of ways to get access, different levels and brands to kind of just engage with cannabis, just because no cannabis user is the same as another one. So I think it's one of those things where you definitely want to have a lot of good offerings, adjust and kind of respond to the data and, get people what they need, which is great. I think last time you were on, it was before you guys had launched Nature's Heritage, which I guess is kind of skewing a little bit more premium. Can you kind of tell us, why kind of go in that direction, what you're looking for in terms of how, getting that out to customers, what sort of the timeline there?
Sure. So, similar to Betty's Eddies on the edible side, Nature's Heritage is a premium cannabis brand focused on cannabis flower and oil-based products. So everything from, eighths of premium jarred hand-trimmed flower to, hand-rolled pre-rolls to pre-roll packs to vape pens, and a lot of kind of new innovation, even on the flower and pre-roll and vape side as well. So, we're very excited as Nature's Heritage has been a leading brand in Massachusetts and Maryland. We recently launched the brand in Delaware, which is about to go adult use next year, or this year, I should say, and we're about to launch in Illinois. So, we put seeds in the ground back in Q4 in Illinois, and we're very excited to bring the Nature's brand to life in the state of Illinois, coming up here at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, that's very cool. We'll definitely want to talk more kind of about, different markets and how kind of things are adapting, but would love to know just kind of as you're rolling stuff out in terms of form factors, is there any sort of interesting trends that you're seeing in terms of vape versus edibles versus anything that's kind of interesting or exciting there, or even, that you personally are getting really, really excited about?
Sure. I think we're seeing a lot of iteration in pre-roll and in vape. I mean, on the vape side, we're seeing, half-gram carts go to 2-gram and 3-gram and 5-gram carts. And, there's certainly some concern around that innovation with regard to the quality of the oil over the time. So, we're spending a good amount of time as we look at larger form factors to make sure the quality of our product stays true through the life cycle of that larger format. So vapes is a really good example of how, we're seeing trends and we're making sure that our quality is translating as we follow those trends. On the pre-roll side, we're seeing a lot of multi-packs. You're seeing, whole ounce packs of pre-rolls in 1 grams and half grams and, a much smaller format. So, figuring out what the right format is, optimizing our pre-roll production in each state, and figuring out, we're seeing a lot of innovation around infused pre-roll, whether that's with distillate infusion or, live resin infusion or, solventless infusion. So there's a lot of different innovation happening. And, what we're, really capitalizing on is we're identifying the segments that consumers really want us to play in, rapidly iterating in some of those product categories and subcategories. And then the winners are staying on board and we're replicating in other states.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I'm imagining a lot of are those trends sort of like national trends that you're seeing in terms of where the strength or interest is from consumers, or is it sort of a little bit regionalized to different markets, individual states, and kind of, cold weather states really love their vapes versus warm, is there any difference there at all?
Yeah, I think with the kaleidoscope that we look through is we certainly look at those national trends. California tends to do things, the West Coast tends to do things first, and we see those things bleed east. But I think there's also examples of some things originating in other places and filtering through. A lot of the regulations are going to guide what can and can't be done and what products succeed in the market. We're seeing more of that, with regard to a 10 milligram edible versus a 50 milligram being able to be sold rec, or, concentrates being able to be sold in a certain format, or, there's a lot of those gotchas across state lines where it definitely does impact the way the trends are going to take hold. So I think you certainly got to be a student of the national trend, but you really got to be educated into what the regulations are in each state to be able to take advantage of how those trends are going to morph on the state level.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense and is super interesting. So I think that's fantastic. Looking at the questions really quickly. Yes, I think the brownie was a very fun thing that you guys did, which was great. Definitely very memorable. Also, Brian, I see your question. We will definitely talk on sort of the hemp side in a little bit. So I see your question there. But kind of, digging a little bit deeper into the markets that you guys are focused in on, would love to maybe hear a little bit about Illinois as a state, how that's kind of working, performing, what kind of things you're seeing out of there specifically, because I think last time we had talked about kind of that as a market and how it's evolving.
Sure. Each one of these states is on its own life cycle, and the details certainly matter. I think in terms of Illinois, our business is growing on the wholesale side of the business, and we are seeing headwinds as other retailers are on the Illinois side of the business as well. The average store from a retail perspective in Illinois is down. Same store sales year over year. The overall revenue in the state for cannabis is up and continues to take share from alcohol, and there's really good trends there and things to get excited about. From an individual store owner or a multi-store owner, there is less revenue happening on average per store as these new stores open, as price compression happens, and as more near state competition continues to grow. So I think all those things are impacting the revenue side of our retail business, specifically in Illinois. I would say, what we're laser focused on is, we talk about every day is customer experience. And how do we make sure that, even though average ticket, may be impacted by cheaper products and more competition, that we are giving guests the best experience that they can possibly have in our retail store. We're focused on everything from faster checkout to, improved product assortment to, better pricing every day, bulking of product in a better fashion. And then really focused on, offering more payment methods at retail. So, we're laser focused on the customer, how to improve their transaction and how to keep them over the long term, not as focused on the short term, deficiencies and headwinds that might be present, focused on the long term.
Yeah, I think that makes sense in terms of general strategy. Is there anything in terms of, I feel like there's been a lot of conversation for the consumer being just kind of generally a little bit strained or stressed just because I think, costs of a lot of different things have gone up kind of all at once. And that's still a story I think that has been in 2024 and seems to be heading a little bit into 2025. In terms of addressing that or kind of meeting the customer where they are, is that sort of done through sort of like loyalty elements, or is it just that providing that really strong experience that people are willing to connect with and really kind of build that relationship with, the bud tenders and you as a brand and kind of that element?
I think it all matters. I think it all matters because to the consumer, that's the overall experience. Is how does the website look and feel? How is it before they've even spoken to a person? The majority of orders are coming into most people's stores, without them talking to anybody. So does your website lend itself to being friendly and having proper pricing and proper bulk discounts built in? Is it informative but not too informative? So the website being in alignment with your business vision and your customer experience is critical, and then really everything following on from that when they actually visit the store. So I think that customer experience is what we're laser focused on. I'd say pricing and loyalty on
Mhm.
top of those things. It's not a set it and forget it at all.
Mhm.
It truly is having a strategy, understanding what your customer is buying in your store, rewarding them for buying the things that make sense, and continuing to try and enamor them as a customer over time and reward them for being a loyal customer. So, yeah, I mean it's an overall strategy at retail that we are focused on during headwinds.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then you did mention just sort of trying to expand payment methods. And I know that does kind of tie into the consumer experience just because it can be frustrating if you have to hit the ATM or, whatever. But I know obviously in cannabis, it can be complicated just because the federal status of it and everything. Can you talk just a little bit more about sort of expanding those payment options? What sort of the thought there?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about making it an easier experience for the customer. So
Mhm.
some of the trends that we see are prepayment, and without listing specific prepayment providers,
Mhm.
we are enabling customers to go onto our website and to order the products that they want and actually use some different technologies to prepay that order so that now when they're coming in the store, we're going to have a fast pickup line that they're enabled to get to the counter quickly, show a QR code and an ID, and then quickly be able to pick up their order and go. So, the idea is that as customers see this quick pickup line within stores, they're going to inquire, how do I do that? And we can sign them up for some of these programs right in store and ease their further transactions from there.
That's great. So it all kind of ties into itself of making a better experience from kind of tip to tail, which is great. Yeah, I definitely think anything you can do to remove barriers for payment or anything like that. I'm very, very excited for the day that eventually we get hopefully credit cards and all the classic normal stuff. Just because I think that makes a big difference in terms of people's willingness to do it. But again, ultimately, I think
And I know we've talked a lot about Illinois, but I mean, around
yeah.
that customer experience, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I mean, in other states, we are focused on delivery. So, it's the idea of whatever the regulations are going to allow us to do, yeah, and not whatever, not because we're not going to do everything, but
Of course.
we do believe delivery is a key part of the customer experience and meeting the customer where they are when
Yeah.
you can. And so, delivery has been, really doing well for us in Massachusetts, and we have intentions as regulations allow to continue to expand that as part of the experience as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Again, in states where you have latitude, why not take it when it makes sense? And I do think just kind of as a culture in the US, I think so many people are familiar with general delivery, whether that's your Amazon package or you're going to DoorDash or something like that. I think it's just part of that normal process and kind of part of the culture. So I think it makes sense to lean into those areas for sure. Um, so maybe from kind of a more business and strategy perspective, would love to hear, because I think when John, your CEO, was on, I want to say a few months ago or maybe a year ago, I think we were talking about kind of what makes MarMed's approach a little bit different in terms of kind of other MSOs out there, kind of more based on the like acquiring other clients, I think ultimately. Is there anything that you can share in terms of how you guys are like set up strategy, what it's looking like in 2025 and like the current environment of how you are kind of setting yourselves apart in terms of how you're operating?
Sure. Yeah, I think we grew as a company from inception in a different way than a lot of the other MSOs.
Mhm.
So we started as a manager of cannabis licenses. So, really sold ourselves into some different clients across multiple states as, cannabis experts in the management of cannabis cultivation, cannabis processing, cannabis products. With that, pre-pandemic, we started what we've called the roll-up of some of these entities into the larger corporation of MRMD. That began pre-pandemic. Massachusetts, Maryland, and Illinois are all successful examples of managed businesses that we have brought in to the MRMD fold, and now are wholly owned pieces of our portfolio and states that are in our license count. And the really last one from that legacy is Delaware. And Delaware, as it's about to go adult use this calendar year, has some transition that'll happen on the business end that will enable us to complete that transaction as well.
Okay. What does that process look like in terms of getting that? Is it basically the same thing that you've done previously and sort of old hat in terms of process and everything like that? Or is it sort of each state has its own thing that you need to kind of adapt to consolidate that in?
Sure. So each state has its own kaleidoscope of the way they look at it. So I think we're generally familiar with the process. It's been rolled out differently in a few of the states. So we're working through that presently. And yeah, we're optimistic that it's going to go in a smooth, good fashion for us.
That's good. I think, yeah, having experience in it, even though it's not exactly the same as everything else, I think it is a huge help in terms of being able to go through that process. So that's great.
Yeah, and we're incredibly excited about Delaware.
Yeah.
Great state, great, two of the larger retail stores in the state that do the majority of the business, great wholesale business there. So a lot for us to be excited about for First State Compassion and for MRMD.
Yeah, it is one of the ones, I think we talked about it a ton last year on the AlphaNooners just generally, but I think it is one of those states that has been kind of under the radar, and it's been like a kind of hidden gem of a success story in terms of getting that turned on. So yeah, I definitely think it needs more love and attention, I think, ultimately, but glad to hear that you're in there, which is great. Real quick, getting a question in from Brian, just kind of while we're talking a little bit about, operating strategy, everything like that. He's asking, any new states on the radar? Indiana is at 70% for medical, and you're in 3 states that surround us. Talks about it being on next year's ballot. Any thoughts on sort of strategy for different states, different markets?
Yeah, I think people that watch us closely will see some exciting things on the horizon for us around expanding and getting into some more states that are interesting to folks from a growth perspective. I don't want to name, I can't name any of the states, but I would say they are states that people are talking about as being some of the higher growth, larger opportunity markets. So we're very excited about some of those growth opportunities, and we think our shareholders will be as well.
An exciting tease. All right, that's exciting to hear. I love to hear it. It's awesome.
Yes.
Thanks for the question, Brian, as well. I see your other one, which we'll get to shortly, but quick question first from Stefan, which is, what should investors be focusing on in your upcoming earnings to negate the noise? Your product is fantastic, but that alone does not always equate to investor value. Great question.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I think we talk about noise a lot in
Yes.
our wall here, right? And you really do have to stay focused on the prize and focused on the fundamentals. So, I think if the only measure of our success were the stock value, a lot of cannabis companies would be very disappointed right now. I think it's overall for the industry, everybody is undervalued. And it's something that we've just got to work through as an overall segment, right? And I do think it, ultimately being an optimist, I do think it's going to recover. Everything ultimately goes up and down, but the fundamentals of our business are solid. Our revenue continues to go up and to the right. I think we continue to spend money wisely and invest in the core of our business. And I think we still see growth in each one of our core markets that can be capitalized on. So that's what's exciting to me. I think we've had more measured growth than some of the explosive things that some of our peers have done. I think, the other piece to what I guess I wanted to add to the previous question around, how we've grown relative to other MSOs. A lot of other MSOs have done large acquisitions that have large debt structures associated to them. And have large notes and things that are coming to do over the next couple of years, which is going to be interesting to watch. We don't have a lot of that, right? So we've got very moderate interest rates on on property loans for the most part as a company, and don't have this large, kind of doomsday coming that some other companies do have. So I feel as though, although the stock isn't representative of the value of our company presently, I feel very good about the company's fundamentals and overall about our strategy as we get into 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I do wish that I wish cannabis had more focus and attention, I think broadly from investors, just because it does, and I know it has had a bit of a ride, and I will definitely admit that. But in terms of, I think generally the market has seemed not quite overvalued, but it seemed to be running a little bit hot. So looking for those opportunities where, things might not be exactly lining up between stock price and kind of what the underlying company itself is doing. And I would imagine that presents opportunities. So we'll see if that changes in 2025, but I think very interesting to hear. Well, then I'd love to maybe take a little bit of time just kind of talking about the environment that we're in 2025 and kind of coming off of 2024, just from kind of an industry perspective. I see Brian's question, which thanks again, Brian, asking about kind of the hemp THC beverage element. I do want to talk about kind of the relationship with cannabis and hemp. So maybe starting high level, kind of, MRMD's kind of view on the new hemp versus cannabis, or hemp and cannabis, however you want to frame it, and then maybe turning to kind of the beverage element as well.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I think from a hemp beverage perspective, or hemp in general perspective, hemp products perspective, it's something we've been looking at and talking about for years, and we'll continue to. I mean, I think every day I feel like there's additional pieces of news that drop and additional strategies that are devised and made public. I think what we've seen lately is a trend for some of the larger MSOs starting to hop in where they were sitting on the sidelines for quite a while. So I think as a company, MRMD is still taking the position that we're going to sit outside of that. We do believe that it is a loophole, ultimately, the Farm Bill, that is going to be closed. So that's one of the primary reasons. I would say the other primary reason for us not going the hemp route currently is because the capital that we do have as a company, we are focused on our core cannabis markets and continuing to build out those markets. So I think we do view hemp as a distraction. It's a risk to the business, but it's also a short-term distraction for us to take limited ability to do multiple things at once. We really want to focus on our core markets and our core strategy as a company, and hemp sits outside of that today for us.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. So keeping that concentrated focus and not kind of getting distracted by potentially noise. All right, that's super interesting. Is there any view that you have on? I know there's been a lot of discussion on the loophole getting closed or resolved in some way, and I think I don't think we've seen anything definitive just yet. But I know there's been a divide between, does it only apply to beverages versus edibles? Does that have any impact, even if you yourself as a company are not in hemp? Does that have any effect if it's edibles versus beverages versus anything else?
So hemp to me, hemp to us, the Farm Bill is ultimately, we'll continue to watch it, but we do believe it's risky to invest in a large way in something that could be closed quickly. Beverage from cannabis in general, we're big supporters of. So we do have some things that we're working on internally. The drink mix that we already have is a beverage, not ready to drink, but powderized. And we are working on some ready to drink options within our retail stores. In every retail store besides Delaware, we do sell ready to drink products. So there's a lot of brands that we work with across multiple states. So we do view beverage as a key piece of cannabis retail today, not even in the future. And a lot of what I'm seeing on the hemp beverage side is you're seeing restaurants, grocery stores, yes, in a lot of different states start to carry them on their menus. There's a Hannaford's in Bethel, Maine, that literally has a whole section dedicated to hemp beverage that's new in the last 6 months. Seeing restaurants with it on the menu, typed on the menu, not just written in. So it's showing more staying power than what I think any of us had thought at first. So, opinions are only as good as the day they're given. So, we reserve the right to change any of what we're thinking. But, as it currently stands, we're standing on the sideline, but we're watching it closely.
I think that's a perfect answer. And definitely, I do think interesting just in terms of, like you're saying, kind of the embracing of beverages and ultimately kind of the cannabis related, ways to consume cannabis. I think I'm excited about it only in that I think people are familiar with alcohol, people are familiar with drinking, and I think it's an easy way to kind of make the connection. Oh, this, again, they're not the same, but it is sort of another thing that you can consume and hopefully introduces people into cannabis who might be a little bit more hesitant just based on, old, not propaganda, but kind of propaganda or hangups, I guess, ultimately on cannabis. So very interesting to hear. Thanks for sharing on that front. And then kind of just related to, I feel like what the big news is for everyone heading, how many days away? 4 days away, heading into the inauguration and kind of a new administration coming in. Would love to just get, high level thoughts on how you guys as a company are viewing the new administration coming in, anything to kind of highlight what's the impact on cannabis.
Sure. I think we're cautiously optimistic about the new administration. I think there have been some positive signs recently from statements from the president-elect, as well as some folks that seem to be shaping up as part of the future administration. So, I mean, reading those tea leaves, I think we are feeling, like I said, a little cautiously optimistic that there could be some change happening. I think there's a little bit of mismessaging out there. I mean, it sounds like the DEA just punted, some of the one of the meetings or hearings that they were about to have to move the ball down the field. So, day to day, we get different news that may sway it a little bit in either direction. But overall, I think, we feel optimistic that, movement could be on the horizon with regard to some of these initiatives.
Yeah, that's super interesting. In terms of like swaying that opinion or swaying kind of the new administration in terms of trying to kind of have that public advocacy element, how important is that kind of in 2025 for you as a company?
I think it's very important. I think it's important from the perspective of figuring out. I mean, if things like banking are going to get figured out, if things like scheduling, if interstate commerce starts to get talked about, these are all regulations and federal rules potentially that could have lifelong implications to these companies that we're all running. So I think we should all be very active in the political conversation with regard to rules and regulations and how this future hopefully legal market is going to roll out in the United States and beyond.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely think it's one of those things also that I think there's been mounting kind of education and knowledge around cannabis in the industry and how it works as a business and industry ultimately. And I think it does take that work to kind of continually drip on politicians to kind of make it clear, what it is that the cannabis companies are, that they're just a regular company that's operating in cannabis. And then I think just continuing to educate, I guess, ultimately around that. And I think that's super important. So we'll have to wait and see. It definitely is crazy that we are so close, but that'll be interesting to see along the way. I guess to pull it together on let me just actually quickly check. Okay, all good on the comments, just making sure. But thanks as well, everyone, for putting in your comments. To end on kind of a fun, positive note, I know you were one of the originators of Betty's Eddies. Yes. And I think last time you were on, we tried to do a little sort of like picking your favorite. I know it's hard, but like trying to pick something fun that you've been into and liking and that. Let's do that.
So what I'm into right now?
Yeah.
Is the question?
Mm-hmm.
Geez, so I just did it's actually a 90-day no cannabis through the end of the year, which honestly, Mackenzie, I haven't done in a very, very long time.
Sure.
So I've been into very small amounts of cannabis in a bowl recently, just like kind of, honestly, like it just weaning my way back because, I took a 90-day window with zero inputs.
Yeah.
So a little goes a long way at this point with me, which is
economical.
Not a place that I've always been.
That's great. I think are the kids calling that a tea break? I've heard that before.
I think
Tolerance
that
break?
is the
Have you
word
heard
they
that?
use. Yes, I think they do use that. No, I mean, but to be totally transparent, I mean, a
Yeah.
little bit of flour here and there, but I have been taking the Vibations is a winner for me. I carry it in my briefcase. A lot of times in the mornings when I get up and do a little workout, I'm slipping on some Vibations. So good stuff.
That is very cool. Awesome. I also think that's super interesting. I know January is often like a dry January for people who will try to not do alcohol as much. So I wonder if
Yeah.
if hemp or cannabis, not hemp, kind of gets in the mix there as well. So we'll have to wait and see. Always interesting to kind of track the data as that comes. But I think that's a continued trend where alcohol is kind of used less and cannabis is kind of taken in the mix there. All right. Well, Ryan, again, really, really appreciate it. Always great to have you on and kind of get a quick touch, kind of heartbeat of what's going on in kind of the industry, as well as, of course, MRMD. So really appreciate you taking the time.
Great to see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you joining, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks again. Bye.
See you.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.